My sister-in-law's engagement party was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it became the night I stopped hiding. I stood near the edge of the grand ballroom, watching my husband's family toast champagne that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The Hartwell estate sparkled with 10,000 fairy lights, imported flowers from Holland, and a string quartet playing softly in the corner. Everything screamed wealth, privilege, and the kind of life I was never supposed to have. "Rachel, sweetie, could you move? You're blocking the ice sculpture." That was my mother-in-law, Patricia. She said it with a smile, but I knew that tone. I'd been hearing it for 12 years. The way she said sweetie like she was addressing a stray dog that had wandered into her home. I stepped aside. I always stepped aside. My husband Daniel squeezed my hand briefly before being pulled away by his father to greet some important guests. That left me alone again, invisible among the glittering crowd of Connecticut's elite. Can you believe she wore that dress? I didn't turn around, but I recognized the voice. My sister-in-law, Madison, the guest of honor, whispering to her bridesmaids. I specifically told Daniel to make sure she dressed appropriately. "This is my engagement party. There are senators here. CEOs. And she shows up looking like she's going to a church potluck." The bridesmaids giggled. I looked down at my navy blue dress. It was the nicest thing I owned. I'd saved for 3 months to buy it. "Her whole family is like that, you know." Madison's voice carried just enough for me to hear. "Her father died with nothing. Literally nothing. Daniel told me they couldn't even afford a proper headstone. Can you imagine? And her mother lives in some tiny apartment in Ohio. It's honestly embarrassing." My face burned. 12 years of this. 12 years of being the charity case Daniel married against his family's wishes. 12 years of whispered insults and backhanded compliments and being seated at the far end of every table. But they didn't know. None of them knew. And tonight, neither did I. Not really. Not until the black cars arrived. I should tell you how it started. How I became the family disappointment before I even walked down the aisle. I met Daniel in college. He was handsome, kind, nothing like the rest of his family. We fell in love the way 20-year-olds do, fast and reckless and certain we could conquer anything. When he brought me home to meet his parents, I didn't know what I was walking into. The Hartwell family had built their fortune in pharmaceutical distribution. They had a mansion in Greenwich, a summer house in the Hamptons, and a family tree that went back to the Mayflower. Or so Patricia loved to remind everyone. I came from Millbrook, Ohio. Population 8,000. My mother was a school librarian. My father had been a quiet man who spent most of his time in his home office, working on things he never talked about. He died when I was 19, right before my sophomore year. We had a small funeral. 20 people, maybe. My mother and I stood at his grave in the rain, and I remember thinking that he deserved more. He deserved so much more than what life had given him. But we couldn't afford more. At least, that's what I believed. The Hartwells made their judgment clear from the start. "So your father was in computers?" Patricia had asked at that first dinner, saying the word like it was a disease. "He was a software developer," I'd said. "He worked from home mostly." One of those. She'd exchanged a look with her husband. "And what did he develop, exactly?" "I'm not sure. He was very private about his work. He passed away before." How tragic. She'd cut me off, already bored. "Daniel, darling, tell your father about your internship." And that was that. I was dismissed. Filed away as the poor girl from Ohio who somehow tricked their son into loving her. The wedding was small. Daniel's family paid for it, which meant Patricia controlled everything. She made sure I knew it was a favor, a kindness extended to someone beneath them. My mother flew in from Ohio and sat quietly in the corner, overwhelmed by the wealth surrounding her. I saw the Hartwells whisper about her dress, about her shoes, about the modest gift she'd brought. "At least she tried," Madison had said, loud enough for my mother to hear. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them that my mother was worth more than all of them combined. That she'd raised me alone after Dad died, working double shifts at the library to keep our small house. That she'd taught me kindness, resilience, and dignity. But I stayed quiet. I always stayed quiet. For 12 years I stayed quiet. The engagement party was in full swing when the argument happened. I was getting some air on the terrace when I heard Daniel and his father in the library, voices raised. "I'm just saying," Son, it's been 12 years. When is Rachel going to contribute something to this family? She's my wife, Dad. She doesn't need to contribute. She doesn't work. She doesn't come from anything. Her family has no connections, no resources, nothing. I've had my accountant look into it. Her father left her mother with almost nothing when he died. There wasn't even a proper estate. My heart clenched. They'd investigated my family? That's not fair, Daniel said, but his voice was weak. I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm being practical. Madison is marrying into the Reynolds family. They have shipping, real estate, political connections. That's what a marriage should bring. What did Rachel bring? Silence. Daniel didn't defend me. I pressed my hand against the cold stone railing and blinked back tears. I should have been used to it by now. But somehow, hearing Daniel's silence hurt more than anything his family had ever said. I was about to go back inside when I noticed something strange. 3 black SUVs had pulled into the circular driveway. Not unusual for a party this size, except these weren't the sleek luxury vehicles the Hartwell's friends drove. These were different. Government-looking. Serious. Men in dark suits stepped out. 8 of them. They moved with purpose, scanning the estate like they were looking for someone. One of them spoke into an earpiece. Then they all turned and walked toward the house. Toward me, I stepped back as they approached the terrace. Mrs. Rachel Hartwell? The lead man had silver hair and kind eyes that seemed at odds with his serious demeanor. Yes. Can I help you? Ma'am, my name is Richard Chen. I'm the CEO of Meridian Technologies. I blinked. Meridian Technologies was one of the largest tech companies in the world. Everyone knew that name. They'd built the operating system that ran on half the computers on the planet. I don't understand, I said. We've been trying to locate you for some time. Your mother's address led us here. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Mrs. Hartwell, I knew your father. I worked with him, actually. For 15 years. My father was a software developer in Ohio. Richard Chen smiled softly. Mrs. Hartwell, your father was one of the founding partners of Meridian Technologies. He wrote the original code that our entire company was built upon. When we went public in 2003, he quietly transferred his shares into a trust. A trust that names you as the sole beneficiary upon your 30th birthday, with full control transferring at age 35. The terrace seemed to tilt beneath my feet. That's not possible. My father. We didn't have money. We couldn't even afford. Your father was a very private man. He asked us to keep his involvement confidential. He said he wanted you to grow up without the burden of wealth. He wanted you to learn what he called the real value of things. Richard pulled a folder from his jacket. Mrs. Hartwell, you turned 35 last month. Which means you now have full control of his estate. I couldn't speak. My hands were shaking. What estate? I finally whispered. Richard Chen looked at me with something like sympathy. As of today's market close, your father's holdings are valued at approximately $4.2 billion. You are the majority shareholder of Meridian Technologies. The world stopped. Inside the ballroom, I could hear Patricia's laughter. Madison's voice carrying over the crowd. The string quartet playing something elegant and expensive. $4.2 billion. My father. The quiet man in his home office. The man who wore the same 3 sweaters for 10 years. The man who drove a 12-year-old Honda and clipped coupons for groceries. He was a billionaire. There's more, Richard said gently. Your father left detailed instructions. Letters. Explanations for why he chose to live the way he did. He wanted you to understand. I need to sit down. Richard guided me to a terrace chair. His team stood at a respectful distance, but I could see the party guests inside starting to notice the commotion. Patricia was frowning toward the windows. Take your time, Mrs. Hartwell. But I should tell you, we're not the only ones who've been looking for you. The financial press has been trying to identify the mysterious majority shareholder for years. Now that you're 35, the trust documents become public record. By tomorrow morning, your name will be everywhere. I looked at the folder in his hands. My father's handwriting on the front. Just 2 words, for Rachel. Why? I asked. Why would he hide this? He explained it better than I can. Richard handed me the folder. But from what I understood, he believed that growing up with money would change you. He'd seen it happen to other people's children. He wanted you to know struggle, so you would know compassion. He wanted you to build your character before you inherited his fortune. Tears were streaming down my face now. All those years. All those insults. All those moments when I felt worthless and small. My father had been watching. Waiting. Preparing something I couldn't imagine. He was very proud of you, Richard added quietly. I hope you know that. The terrace door burst open. What is going on out here? Patricia stormed toward us, her face a mask of outrage. Who are these people? This is a private event. Richard turned to face her with perfect composure. Mrs. Hartwell? I'm Richard Chun, CEO of Meridian Technologies. We're here to speak with your daughter-in-law about her inheritance. Patricia laughed. Actually laughed. Her inheritance. Rachel doesn't have an inheritance. Her father was a nobody who died with nothing. Patricia. Daniel's voice came from behind her. He'd followed her outside along with Madison, his father, and half the party guests who had gathered near the windows to watch. I'm just stating facts, Daniel. Everyone knows. Mrs. Hartwell, Richard interrupted, his voice carrying clearly across the terrace. Rachel's father was my business partner. He co-founded one of the largest technology companies in the world. The estate he left to his daughter is valued at over $4 billion. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. I watched Patricia's face go through about 17 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion. Disbelief. Horror. And then something I'd never seen before. Fear. That's impossible, she stammered. We had our accountant investigate. There was nothing. Your accountant looked at public records. David Harrison's involvement in Meridian was kept confidential at his request. The trust was structured specifically to avoid detection until Rachel reached the age of full control. Richard's voice was polite but firm. I assure you, it's very possible. And very real. Madison pushed forward, her perfect face twisted with confusion. Wait. You're saying Rachel is a billionaire? The majority shareholder of a company worth significantly more than that, yes. Madison turned to look at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Like I was a stranger who had somehow infiltrated her party. But she shops at Target, Madison whispered, as if that was the most important detail. I like Target, I said quietly. It was the first thing I'd said since the revelation, and it felt strange to speak. Daniel was staring at me. Rachel. Did you know? No. I shook my head. I had no idea. My father never. He never said anything. Why would he hide this from you? I looked down at the folder in my hands. My father's final gift. All the answers I'd spent my life wondering about. Because he wanted me to know who I was without it. I opened the folder. My father's handwriting filled page after page. Letters dated across 20 years, some written when I was still a child. Some written just months before he died. The first letter was titled Why I Chose This Path. My dearest Rachel, I read aloud, my voice trembling. If you're reading this, you've turned 35, and Richard has found you. I'm sorry for the confusion this must cause. I'm sorry for every struggle you've faced that I could have prevented. But I hope you'll understand why I made the choices I did. I looked up. Everyone was watching. Patricia, Daniel, Madison, the party guests pressed against the windows. I kept reading. I grew up with nothing. Real nothing. Not the nothing that wealthy people pretend to understand, but the kind of nothing that means choosing between food and heat. When I helped build Meridian, when the money started coming, I watched what it did to people. I watched my partners change. Their children grew up entitled, unkind, believing they deserved things simply because of the numbers in their bank accounts. I didn't want that for you. I wanted you to know what it meant to work hard. To be underestimated. To face judgment and still choose kindness. I wanted you to build the kind of character that money can't buy. My voice broke. I couldn't continue. Richard gently took the folder. May I? I nodded. He read the next part. I know it wasn't fair. I know you suffered because of my choice. I watched from a distance as people looked down on your mother, on you. I wanted to intervene so many times. But every time I saw you respond to cruelty with grace, to judgment with dignity, I knew I had made the right decision. You became exactly the person I hoped you would be. Not because of money, but despite the lack of it. You know the value of things that can't be bought. Love. Integrity. compassion. These are your true inheritance. The money is just a tool to do good in the world. I was crying now. 12 years of pain, 12 years of feeling worthless, and my father had been watching the whole time, believing in me. Proud of me. There's one more thing, Richard said, turning to the final page. He addressed this to your husband's family specifically. Patricia's face went white. Richard, read. To whoever is reading this alongside my daughter. If you treated her poorly because you believed she had nothing, you have revealed your own character, not hers. My daughter is worth more than all the money in the world. If you were too blind to see that without knowing about my fortune, then the failure is yours, not hers. The silence that followed was deafening. Madison was the first to speak. I didn't mean. The things I said were just what? I asked quietly. Just true. You believed them. You meant every word. Rachel, sweetie. Patricia stepped forward. Her voice completely different now. Soft. Careful. The voice she used with important people. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't call me sweetie. Not now. You've called me that for 12 years like it was an insult. Like I was beneath you. That's not. I heard you, Patricia. At every dinner, every holiday, every family event. I heard you whisper about my mother's clothes. I heard you laugh about my father's profession. I heard everything. I stood up, my legs steadier than I expected. And I stayed quiet because I loved your son. Because I thought that being part of this family meant accepting how you treated me. I looked at Daniel. My husband. The man who had never once stood up for me when his family attacked. Did you know? I asked him. Did you know about any of this? Of course not. Rachel, you know I would have. Would have what? Defended me. When was the last time you defended me, Daniel? When your mother called my family embarrassing. When your sister mocked my dress. When your father had an accountant investigate my background. He had no answer. Because there was no answer. I loved you without the money, I said softly. I stayed in this family without the money. I endured everything without the money. That's who I am. The question is, who are you? Richard Chen cleared his throat politely. Mrs. Hartwell, there are some immediate matters we should discuss. The board would like to meet with you. There are also several charitable foundations your father established that require your direction, and numerous decisions about the company's future that need your input. I looked at the folder in my hands. My father's legacy. Not just money, but responsibility, purpose. I'll need some time, I said. But yes, I want to understand everything. I want to honor what my father built. Of course. Richard handed me his card. Whenever you're ready. And Mrs. Hartwell? For what it's worth. Your father talked about you often. He said you were the best thing he ever created. Not the company. You. I thought I was done crying, but apparently not. The next few hours were a blur. The engagement party effectively ended. Most guests suddenly had urgent business elsewhere, though not before finding excuses to introduce themselves to me. People who had ignored me for a decade were suddenly fascinated by my opinions on everything. I watched Patricia try to manage the situation, spinning the revelation to anyone who would listen. We always knew Rachel was special, she said to a cluster of guests. Daniel has been saying for years that her family had hidden depths. The hypocrisy would have been funny if it wasn't so exhausting. I slipped away to the library and called my mother. Mom, I need to tell you something. Rachel? What's wrong? You sound strange. Did you know about Dad? About Meridian? About any of it? Long pause. Then a sigh that carried 20 years of weight. I knew some of it. Not the amount. Your father was always so secretive about the numbers. But I knew he was involved in something bigger than he let on. Why didn't you tell me? Because he asked me not to. He made me promise, Rachel. He said you needed to find your own strength first. He said he was giving you something more valuable than money. Her voice cracked. I wanted to tell you so many times. Especially when I saw how those people treated you. But your father was so certain it was the right path. All those years, Mom. You let them look down on you too. I knew the truth. Their opinions didn't matter to me. I thought about my mother's quiet dignity. How she'd sat in the corner at my wedding, graceful despite the whispers. How she'd never once complained about the way the Hartwells treated her. She'd known all along. And she'd kept the secret to honor my father's wishes. I love you, Mom, I love you too, sweetheart. What are you going to do now? I looked around the library at the leather-bound books and oil paintings that the Hartwells displayed like trophies. I'm going to figure out who I want to be. Not who they told me I was. The weeks that followed changed everything. Richard Chen's team guided me through my father's empire. It was overwhelming at first, the scope of what he'd built: Meridian Technologies. 3 charitable foundations, real estate holdings across 4 countries, a venture capital fund that had invested in dozens of startups. But what amazed me most was my father's vision. Every business decision was rooted in values. Every investment considered environmental impact. Every charitable foundation focused on education for underprivileged children. He'd created this empire as a force for good. And now it was mine to continue. Your father always said the same thing, Richard told me during one of our meetings. Make money to make a difference, or don't make it at all. I started spending time at Meridian's headquarters. At first, people didn't know what to make of me. The mysterious majority shareholder who had appeared out of nowhere. The woman who arrived in a 12-year-old Honda because I hadn't thought to buy a new car yet. But I listened. I learned. And slowly, I found my voice. My first major decision was to increase Meridian's minimum wage across all facilities to a true living wage. The board had concerns about costs. I showed them projections about reduced turnover and increased productivity. My father grew up choosing between food and heat, I told them. No one who works for this company should ever face that choice. The measure passed unanimously. As for the Hartwells, the dynamics shifted predictably. Patricia suddenly wanted to have lunch every week. She had ideas for family investments and charitable partnerships that would, coincidentally, benefit her social standing. Madison's fiancé suddenly found reasons to seek my advice on his business ventures. I declined all of it. Politely, firmly, but completely. Daniel and I had harder conversations. I don't know who we are anymore, he admitted one night. Everything I thought I knew about our life. About you. I'm the same person I was before. But you're not. You could leave. You don't need me anymore. I looked at my husband. 12 years of marriage. Some of it wonderful, much of it difficult. He had never been cruel like his family. But he had never been brave either. I never needed you, Daniel. I chose you. The question is whether that choice was based on who you really are, or who I hoped you would be. We're still figuring that out. Some days I think we'll make it. Other days I'm not so sure. But I know this much. I will never again accept treatment I don't deserve to protect someone else's comfort. 6 months after the engagement party, I flew my mother to Connecticut. Not to see the Hartwells. To see what I was building. I'd bought a small office building downtown and converted it into a community center. Free education programs, job training, after-school care for working parents. I'd named it the David Harrison Center. My mother cried when she saw the sign. He would be so proud, she said. I think he already was. We stood together in the lobby, looking at a photo of my father that I'd hung near the entrance. The quiet man from Ohio who had changed the world and never told anyone. Why do you think he really did it? I asked. The secrecy. The tests. All of it. My mother thought for a long moment. I think he was afraid. He'd seen what money did to people. How it corrupted them. He didn't want to lose you to it. She squeezed my hand. He wanted to make sure you were strong enough to handle this power without letting it change who you are. And if I hadn't been, if I'd become bitter or mean, then the trust would have donated everything to charity. There was a clause. Richard didn't tell you, but I knew. If you hadn't turned out the way your father hoped, you would have received enough to live comfortably. But the rest would have gone to good causes. I stared at her. He was testing me. The whole time. He was giving you a choice. Who you became was up to you. I thought about the 12 years I'd spent being underestimated. The insults I'd endured. The dignity I'd chosen to maintain despite everything. I could have become bitter. I could have let their cruelty make me cruel. But I didn't. And now I understood why. My father hadn't just given me money. He'd given me the chance to prove who I was without it. To build character that wealth could never buy. That was his real inheritance. Last month, Patricia hosted her annual spring gala. The invitation arrived with a personal note begging me to attend. I went. Not to show off. Not for revenge. But because I finally understood something important. The people who judged me based on money had revealed themselves. They'd shown me exactly who they were when they thought I had nothing. Now that I had everything, their fawning attention meant nothing. But my own integrity. The kindness I'd chosen when it would have been easier to become hard. That was mine. No one could take it away. I walked into that gala wearing a dress I'd bought at a small boutique owned by a woman I was helping start her business. Not expensive. Just beautiful. And mine. Patricia greeted me like I was royalty. Madison complimented my dress 6 times. Daniel's father asked my opinion on his investment strategy. I smiled. I was polite. I was gracious. And I knew with absolute certainty that their opinions had never mattered. My father had taught me the value of things that can't be bought. Now I had the power to teach others.
Don't pity me. My heart doesn't need your mercy. I can still stand on my own. I was broken by your leaving, fell deeper than I thought I would. But pain has taught me how to heal now and survive what once I couldn't. You don't have to look back sadly, don't reach out with guilty hands. What you shattered made me stronger. Now I rise where I once collapsed. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. I once begged for your affection. Now I've learned my worth in scars. And the man you left in pieces found his own way through the dark. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. Begun. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll rise alone again. I'll rise alone again. Some days feel off, like I'm standing but still falling. A little pain, a little tired, and no one to tell it all to. There are days that feel unsteady, like I'm drifting out of place. Every step just feels so heavy, with a smile I have to fake. A little hurt I keep inside me, a little weight I always hide. and the thousand quiet worries I've been holding deep inside. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, a little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. I keep walking through the silence like it's all I've ever known. Every crowded room reminds me how it feels to be alone. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. Maybe one day I'll be stronger, maybe I'll learn how to speak, but for now I keep it buried in the parts of me too weak. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you.